You're just sitting there, morning coffee in hand, scrolling through the news, and then suddenly a bomb explodes across social media. U.S. President Donald Trump abruptly turns against and openly criticizes one of his closest European allies. Not a distant figure, but Giorgia Meloni, Italy's prime minister, once widely seen as a steadfast ally. Honestly, it feels like something out of a Hollywood movie when the hero suddenly betrays his closest comrade. And the reason? The conflict in Iran. Trump is trying to shift the entire burden onto Europe and NATO, turning them into scapegoats for the chaos unfolding. The Strait of Hormuz is clogged, energy prices are surging, and Europe's economy is starting to wobble. Meanwhile, the U.S. says you need to step in, even though they were the ones who set things in motion without consulting anyone. I'm honestly shocked. I thought Meloni was tough and outspoken, but even she seems to have reached her limit. She publicly opposes the war, Italy refuses to support it, and even suspends defense agreements with Israel. In just a few hours, everything flips. Trump lashes out, calling her weak, while murmurs start spreading across Europe. You know what? This isn't just a minor disagreement anymore. This is the first crack, and it's spreading fast. I'll walk you through every step in detail, no dodging, no exaggeration, because this is the moment history is shifting right in front of us. And then, in the blink of an eye, everything escalates faster than an action movie. Donald Trump doesn't stop at Giorgia Meloni. He posts an image on social media depicting himself as Jesus healing the sick. Many people are left shaking their heads, calling it excessive, even offensive. Trump, however, claims he thought it was a doctor from the International Committee of the Red Cross. That explanation only deepens the global confusion. Meloni can't stay silent. She responds forcefully, condemning Trump's attack on Pope Leo XIV for simply calling for a ceasefire in Iran. She says such statements are unacceptable. And just like that, the fracture officially begins. Italy not only refuses to join the Iran conflict, but also suspends its defense cooperation agreement with Israel. A nation once considered one of America's closest allies in Europe is now openly creating distance. You can see it clearly. This is no longer a personal dispute. It's a sign that Trumpism is becoming deeply toxic in Europe. Anyone associated with him right now risks public backlash. Even in Italy, where Meloni once held a firm line, she is now choosing Europe over Washington. But Meloni wasn't the first. This path was actually laid out over a month earlier by Pedro Sanchez, Spain's prime minister, known for his political resilience. This time, Sanchez takes a completely different direction from Trump. He refuses to raise defense spending to 5% of GDP as required by NATO. He openly criticizes U.S. immigration policies. He imposes a full embargo on arms sales to Israel and even bans goods from illegal settlements. And while tensions over Iran intensify, Sanchez calmly travels to China to meet Xi Jinping. He makes it clear, Spain stands for a multilateral global order, not one dictated solely by the U.S. At first, many dismissed him as isolated, but within weeks, the winds shift. Italy, Finland, Canada, the United Kingdom, even Germany begin to follow Spain's lead. Countries start closing their airspace, refusing U.S. aircraft landing or transit tied to the Iran conflict. Sanchez doesn't call for open confrontation. He simply acts in line with Europe's interests. And now he's becoming a new symbol, a quiet leader of resistance against Trump's approach. Few would have expected a Spanish prime minister to take on that role. Tensions between the U.S. and Europe are now reaching levels unseen in years. From trade to Ukraine, from Greenland to Iran, everything is destabilizing. And NATO, the world's most powerful military alliance, is hanging by a thread. What do you think about what's happening? Trump isn't the type to stay quiet when challenged. He issues a series of ultimatums demanding that allies reopen the Strait of Hormuz within days or face consequences. He threatens to punish any NATO country that refuses to support the U.S. in the Iran conflict. Imagine this. The conflict is initiated by the US and Israel alone. No prior consultation, no joint planning. Even defense ministers from Italy and Estonia are stranded in Dubai after sudden airspace closures. Europe and America's Asian allies are pushed into extreme risk without ever being asked. Then, when chaos erupts, when oil prices surge due to the Hormuz blockade, Washington turns to Europe and demands involvement. But Europe has had enough. They reject the approach, refuse to be dragged into a war that isn't theirs, and instead push for ceasefire negotiations. Trump reacts furiously. He threatens to withdraw the U.S. from NATO, despite requiring approval from the United States Congress, to let NATO fade away, to pull troops from bases in Germany and Spain, and to cut all aid to Ukraine. And then he returns to a familiar move, demanding Greenland from Denmark. A remote, icy land, but in Trump's hands, a political weapon. But Europe isn't backing down. Spain leads the pushback, closing airspace to weapons transport linked to Iran. Italy refuses U.S. landings in Sicily. France denies overflight rights. Pedro Sanchez is now seen by many Europeans as a true leader. Not loud, not theatrical, just quietly defending the continent's interests. Meanwhile, Denmark is genuinely alarmed. Reports suggest contingency plans to destroy airport runways in Greenland to prevent a potential U.S. takeover if Trump follows through on threats. Preparations include explosives, blood reserves, real military drills. This isn't rumor. It reflects the level of distrust that has taken hold. You see it now. This is unfolding like a geopolitical disaster film. Vladimir Putin is likely watching from the Kremlin with quiet satisfaction. Every threat against NATO is a strategic gift to Russia. Moscow increases border provocations, violating Estonian airspace. And Europe begins seriously discussing the creation of its own independent military, a true European army to reduce reliance on the U.S. The transatlantic alliance is shaking violently. From trade wars to Greenland, from Iran to NATO, everything is pushing it toward the edge. Donald Trump isn't just making empty threats. He's targeting Spain directly, the country leading the pushback against him. He declares he could completely cut off trade with Madrid. Think about it. Trade between the two sides is worth nearly $50 billion a year. Spain imports large amounts of liquefied natural gas from the U.S., and Trump knows this vulnerability well. He could invoke a law from the 1970s, anti-boycott legislation tied to Israel, to label Spain as an economic adversary. If Spain is placed on that list, U.S. companies operating there could face double taxation and lose major tax benefits. So what has Spain actually done? Under Pedro Sanchez, it has banned arms sales to Israel, prohibited goods from illegal settlements, and blocked fuel and dual-use items from passing through its territory. Sanchez has been direct and unapologetic, and Trump is using exactly that to justify potential retaliation. But Europe no longer seems afraid. Denmark has even prepared contingency plans to destroy airport runways in Greenland to prevent a possible U.S. takeover if Trump follows through. These preparations reportedly included real military drills, explosives, and emergency blood supplies. This isn't fiction. It reflects how tense things became late last year. You can see the shift. U.S. allies are now preparing to defend themselves from the U.S. itself. Meanwhile, Vladimir Putin in Moscow is likely watching with satisfaction. Every time Trump threatens to withdraw troops from Europe, cut aid to Ukraine, or impose sanctions, Russia increases pressure recently, even violating Estonia's airspace. At the same time, Europe is speaking more openly about building its own independent military force. There's growing resistance to being pulled into conflicts decided unilaterally by Washington, only to bear the consequences afterward. NATO, the most powerful military alliance on the planet, is now hanging by a thread. From Iran, the Strait of Hormuz, to Greenland and global trade tensions, everything is converging. Trump appears determined to push Europe into taking the blame for a conflict he helped initiate, but Europe is no longer willing to play that role. It's choosing its own path. No one knows how this will end. Will Trump really impose full sanctions on Spain? Could NATO fracture or even collapse? Or will Europe succeed in building a fully independent defense alliance? This story is still unfolding day by day. I'll keep you updated as new developments emerge. What do you think? How long can NATO hold together in its current form? Donald Trump is using every lever he can to push Europe into taking the blame for the Iran conflict. He threatens trade sanctions against Spain, to withdraw troops from key bases, to cut aid to Ukraine, and even to bring Greenland into play as a geopolitical bargaining chip. But Europe is no longer the compliant junior partner. It's pushing back. Countries are closing airspace, denying landings, and even preparing contingency plans to disable runways in Greenland to prevent a potential U.S. move. Denmark has reportedly gone as far as conducting real drills involving explosives and emergency preparations. Allies are now, remarkably, preparing to defend themselves from their own ally. And who benefits the most? Vladimir Putin. From the Kremlin, every new threat against NATO plays directly into Russia's hands. Each moment of transatlantic tension is followed by increased provocations like airspace violations over Estonia. Meanwhile, Europe is starting to speak much more openly about building its own independent military force. There's a growing determination not to be dragged into conflicts decided unilaterally by Washington, only to shoulder the consequences afterward. Right now, NATO, the most powerful military alliance on the planet, is hanging by a thread. From Iran to trade disputes, from Greenland to strategic choke points like the Strait of Hormuz, everything is converging at once. No one knows what happens next. Will Trump actually impose full sanctions on Spain? Will he follow through on troop withdrawals and let NATO weaken? Or will Europe break away and form a truly independent defense bloc? This is unfolding in real time. What do you think? How long can NATO hold together in its current form? Will Trump succeed in shifting the burden onto Europe, or is this the moment Europe finally charts its own path? If this made you sit up and think, share it with someone who follows global politics, you'll probably spark a serious debate.